Hello, my friend. The world of magic, filled with legends and ancient tales, is opening its gates once again. Tonight, in the Gryffindor dormitory by the crackling fireplace, I will share another story with my friends. Join us, for the magic is about to come alive.
The night had fallen heavy over Hogwarts Castle, the kind of darkness that seemed to breathe and whisper against the ancient stone. Clouds rolled thick over the Scottish Highlands, pressing low, and thunder murmured somewhere far beyond the Forbidden Forest. The towers of the castle gleamed faintly with candlelight, and the reflection of the moon shimmered on the surface of the Black Lake, until, for the first time in centuries, the lake stirred. A faint ripple crossed the water, then another. The merpeople, slumbering deep in their village of coral and glass, opened their eyes and felt the tremor move through their bones. A sound rose beneath the water, low, mournful, and old. Up in his circular office, Albus Dumbledore paused mid-sentence as the quill in his hand stopped scratching across parchment. Fawkes, his phoenix, gave a soft, uneasy trill from his perch by the window. The candle flames wavered, and the silver instruments on Dumbledore's desk began to hum in discord. "Ah," Dumbledore murmured, standing slowly. "So it begins again." He crossed to the tall, arched window and looked out upon the lake, where the moonlight now danced unevenly on the rippling surface. The disturbance was not caused by mere weather. He could feel the pulse of ancient magic in the air, something older than Hogwarts itself. By the time dawn brushed pale light across the castle's spires, rumors had begun to spread among the students. The Black Lake had churned all night. Some said they had seen enormous shadows moving beneath the surface. Others swore they heard singing, beautiful and terrible, echoing from the depths. At breakfast in the great hall, the chatter was unusually tense. A plate of golden toast remained untouched before Dumbledore as he listened to the buzz of frightened voices. Even the enchanted ceiling above reflected the troubled skies outside. Professor McGonagall leaned close, her face tight. "It has been centuries since anything stirred beneath that lake, Albus. Are you certain it isn't merely the merpeople?" Dumbledore shook his head. "No. The merpeople are restless as well. Something older stirs in their domain. Something we once promised would never wake." He stood, his expression grave yet calm. "Minerva, see that the students remain inside the castle after sundown. I must visit our neighbors beneath the water." That night, when the castle was asleep, Dumbledore left his office. The corridors were silent except for the gentle snores of the portraits and the soft shuffle of the castle ghosts making their nightly rounds. He passed through the courtyard, where snow had begun to fall in delicate flakes, and descended toward the lake's edge. The air smelled of rain and iron. With a flick of his wand, his boots became waterproof, and a silver bubble of air shimmered around his head. Then, with no hesitation, he stepped into the freezing water and began to walk downward, his robes flowing around him like dark banners. The deeper he went, the dimmer the light became. The glow from his wand illuminated strange shapes, boulders carved with runes, bones half buried in silt, and long strands of waterweed drifting like hair. When at last he reached the merpeople's village, dozens of wary faces appeared from coral doorways. Their leader, a tall figure with silver scales and sharp eyes, swam forward and bowed. Headmaster Dumbledore, the merperson spoke in the liquid, echoing voice of his kind. You should not have come. The water is not safe. The dragon stirs. The dragon? Dumbledore asked quietly, though he already knew the answer. The guardian of the deep, the leader said, his eyes darting toward the shadowy waters beyond. Our songs no longer soothe it. Someone, something, has woken it from its ancient sleep. Dumbledore's mind began to race. Has anyone entered these depths without your leave? The merperson hesitated. 3 nights passed. There was light. Green like the curses of men. We found no body, but the water burned. A cold unease passed through Dumbledore. Dark magic had been cast in the lake, powerful enough to rouse something that even the founders of Hogwarts had bound in chains of enchantment. He turned his eyes toward the blackness beyond the coral village. Show me where it happened. The mer people led him through a ravine where the water grew colder still. The rocks here were sharp and glittered faintly with frost. At last, they reached a wide hollow where the lake bed opened into a cavernous pit. The walls pulsed with faint blue light, and deep within, something vast shifted in its sleep. A single golden eye opened in the darkness. The water trembled, and then the voice came, not spoken aloud, but inside Dumbledore's mind. Why have you disturbed me, wizard of the castle? Dumbledore stood his ground, wand in hand, his voice calm, though his heart thundered. I seek not to disturb you, ancient one, but dark magic has stirred your rest. I would see peace restored. The water around him began to boil. The creature moved closer, and Dumbledore saw its shape more clearly. A massive dragon, its body coiled like a serpent, scales shimmering with the color of the deep. Peace? The voice rumbled, shaking the very water. There is no peace. You built your fortress above my prison. You draw from my lake, feed on my domain, and yet call yourselves masters of this land. I am no master, Dumbledore said softly. Only a keeper. Tell me what you desire. The dragon's eye narrowed. Freedom. Then it vanished into the dark, leaving only the echo of its fury in a current so strong that even Dumbledore was driven back toward the shore. When he emerged from the lake, the snow had turned to rain and the storm was rising. Fawkes flew down to meet him, circling once before landing upon his shoulder. Ah, my friend, Dumbledore whispered, shivering slightly. It seems the castle stands upon the edge of another war. He looked back at the lake, beneath the storm-tossed waves. Something ancient had awakened, and it was no mere beast of legend. It was angry, and it remembered. Morning dawned gray and uneasy over Hogwarts. Mist clung to the turrets, drifting low across the lawns and curling around the edge of the black lake like a living thing. The students felt it before the teachers spoke of it, a chill that crept into their bones, whispers that passed down the corridors like the flutter of ghostly wings. Something ancient had woken in the waters below, and though they did not know its name, they could feel its breath on the wind. Dumbledore stood in his office once more, hands clasped behind his back, his gaze fixed on the moving fog below. Fawkes perched upon his golden stand, feathers glinting faintly in the muted light. The phoenix let out a quiet, mournful note, as if sensing the storm that loomed unseen. I know, Dumbledore murmured to him. I feel it too. On the desk before him lay a small crystal bowl filled with water drawn from the lake. It shimmered with faint blue light, pulsing in rhythm with something deep beneath the surface. Every few seconds, a dark ripple crossed it, an echo of the dragon's restless heart. A knock came at the door. "Enter," he said. Professor Severus Snape stepped into the room, his black robes trailing behind him like smoke. "You sent for me," he said, his tone cautious. "Yes," Dumbledore replied. "I need your knowledge, Severus. Something of great power stirs beneath the castle. I believe dark magic was used to awaken it." Snape's eyes flicked toward the shimmering bowl. "And you think this creature was roused by wizards?" "I am certain of it." Snape frowned, folding his arms. "Then you will want to know that one of the older dungeons was broken into last night. The locks melted as though touched by fiend fire. Someone entered the restricted archives." Dumbledore's eyes narrowed slightly. "And what was taken?" "A record," Snape said. "One written by Salazar Slytherin himself, a treatise on magical beasts bound beneath Hogwarts. I read it once, years ago. It spoke of a guardian creature placed in the lake to protect something of value." Dumbledore felt the pieces begin to align, though the picture they formed was troubling. Then the dragon is not merely a creature of myth. It guards a relic, perhaps one of Grindelwald's. Snape's gaze sharpened. "Grindelwald? He is long gone, Headmaster." "Yes," said Dumbledore quietly, "but his secrets are not. During our final duel, he spoke of a weapon, a shard of water-bound crystal that could amplify one's magic beyond control. I thought it destroyed. It seems I was mistaken." For a long moment, silence hung between them. The fire crackled and the shadows trembled along the walls. Then Dumbledore said, "I will go below again. Tonight." Snape raised an eyebrow. "Alone?" Dumbledore smiled faintly. "I am never truly alone." He glanced toward Fawkes, who answered with a soft burst of golden flame. That evening, as dusk painted the sky in bruised shades of violet and gray, Dumbledore descended once more toward the lake. This time he was not the only one who had noticed its strange glow. The merpeople had gathered near the surface, their eyes wide and fearful. The water rippled with silent energy, and somewhere in its depths, a deep rumbling could be heard. Slow, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of a mountain. Dumbledore raised his wand, and a path of light unfurled before him, leading down into the dark. He followed it, step by careful step, until he reached the cavern where he had seen the golden eye. But now the chamber was brighter. Faint tendrils of green light coiled along the stone, twisting like vines. He knelt beside a mark etched into the sand, runes, recent and rough, a summoning circle, imperfect, yet dangerous. He touched it gently with his wand, and the water hissed as a shadow of memory flickered before him. A figure cloaked in black, wand raised, voice chanting words of command. And then, a blast of light, and the shape of wings in the dark. Someone had woken the dragon deliberately. Before Dumbledore could dispel the image, the water around him began to churn. From the depths below, a shape rose like a mountain, vast, terrible, beautiful. The water dragon emerged fully now, its scales glimmering like sapphires. Beneath moonlight, its wings stretching wide, though they were made not of flesh but of rippling current. "You return, little wizard." The voice spoke inside his mind, calm but filled with restrained fury. "Did you bring me chains again?" "I come not as jailer," Dumbledore said, his wand lowered. "But I must understand why you rage. Someone has disturbed your rest." The dragon's eyes blazed like twin suns beneath the water. "They sought the heart," it said, "the crystal that binds my prison. They wished to claim its power, but they failed. And now I awaken, for my bond is broken." "Then the heart still lies within the lake?" "It does. and I shall take it with me when I rise." The water surged, and the cavern shook. Stones tumbled from above, and even Dumbledore had to steady himself as a mighty current swept outward. "You cannot leave," he said, voice ringing with command. "If you do, your power will destroy this castle and all who dwell within it." "Then so be it," thundered the dragon. "The world of men built its walls upon my cage. Let their stones crumble as mine have done." For a moment the creature's rage filled the lake like a storm. Lightning flashed through the water, and every creature within miles fled from its fury. Dumbledore raised his wand, murmuring words older than Hogwarts itself, and a dome of silver light spread from his feet. "Listen to me," he cried. "If you rise now, you bring not freedom but ruin. Let me mend the bond. Let me set you free without death." The dragon paused, its great head bending low, eyes fixed upon him. The water stilled, heavy and tense. "You would free me?" "If it can be done without harm," said Dumbledore, his voice steady. "I give you my word." For a long time the creature said nothing. Then slowly it sank back into the shadows. "3 nights," it said. "At the end of the 3rd, the heart will break. If you have not freed me by then, I will rise, and none shall stop me." The cavern darkened, the dragon vanished, and the lake grew calm once more. Dumbledore stood alone, his wand light flickering against the stone. 3 nights. That was all the time Hogwarts had. When he returned to the surface, the rain had begun again, soft but relentless. Fawkes appeared in a burst of flame beside him, wings glimmering like sunrise. 3 nights, Dumbledore whispered, and an old promise to keep. He turned toward the castle, the storm's wind tugging at his robes, and made his way back through the mist. The torches in the corridors flared as he passed, as though recognizing the urgency in his step. Somewhere below the dragon waited, and somewhere within the castle someone had broken the seal that bound it. The battle had not yet begun, but the first move had been played. The following day broke with a hollow kind of silence. No bird sang above the lake, no breeze stirred the treetops. The surface of the water was smooth as glass, hiding beneath it all the things that now whispered and moved in the deep. Within the walls of Hogwarts, life carried on, though the teachers wore tight expressions and the students could sense the tension like a spell gone wrong. Even the portraits hushed their usual chatter when Dumbledore passed. In the Great Hall, breakfast was quiet. The enchanted ceiling reflected not the blue sky of morning, but a dull, unmoving gray. The candles flickered nervously, dripping wax as if sweating under unseen heat. Dumbledore entered late, robes trailing damp from the mist outside. He said little as he took his seat, and McGonagall watched him closely. 3 nights, he murmured to her over the clinking of cutlery, her brow furrowed. 3 nights until what, Albus? He hesitated only a moment. Until the dragon rises. McGonagall paled, though her voice remained composed. Then we must evacuate the students. Not yet, he said. If we move them now, panic will spread. The creature is bound still, though its chains are failing. We have time, but only if I can find the artifact it guards. At that, Snape, who had been listening from a short distance away, leaned forward. "The heart," he said in a low voice. "The crystal you mentioned. I've been searching the archives. There are fragments of legend, nothing complete, but enough to suggest it was forged during the age of Grindelwald's rise. He believed it to be one of the anchors of elemental power." "Indeed," Dumbledore replied. And he was not wrong. Snape's dark eyes gleamed. If the heart breaks, its magic will unbind everything it holds, including the creature. Precisely, said Dumbledore, which is why we must find the heart and restore its seal before the third night. For a while they ate in silence, though none of them tasted the food. Then Dumbledore rose and swept from the hall, his mind already whirling with plans. He needed knowledge older than any in the castle's books, and there was only one place left to seek it. That evening, as twilight deepened, he descended into the Chamber of Secrets, not through the pipes as Harry once had, for this was long before that boy's time, but through a hidden stair that only the headmaster could open. The air grew cold as he went down, the torches sputtering into eerie green light. At last he stood before the stone serpent door, tracing the carved scales with one finger. "Open," he whispered in parcel tongue. The door slid aside with a hiss, revealing the immense hall beyond. Statues of serpents lined the walls, their jeweled eyes glinting in the dim glow. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, forming shallow pools that mirrored the ancient pillars. "Salazar Slytherin," Dumbledore said softly into the echoing air. "You bound a guardian to this castle once. I seek the secret of its chain." For a moment nothing answered but the drip of water. Then from the shadows, a voice rose, a whisper that was neither alive nor dead. "Few have spoken my name in reverence. Albus Dumbledore." The air rippled, and before him appeared the ghostly form of Slytherin himself, proud and robed in serpent green, his eyes as cold as the stones around them. "You meddle with forces you cannot contain," the Founder's Shade said. "The dragon was never meant to wake. Why disturb its slumber?" "It was not I who disturbed it," Dumbledore replied. "Someone seeks to use the creature for destruction. I would prevent that." Slytherin regarded him for a long moment. "The heart of water is both prison and promise," he said at last. "It binds the guardian and seals the lake's depths. Break it, and all that sleeps below will rise. Mend it, and the creature remains in chains until time itself forgets its name." Dumbledore inclined his head. "Then tell me how to mend it." A slow smile curved the ghost's mouth, neither kind nor cruel. "Magic older than yours, Headmaster. It was crafted in unity. Earth, flame, air, and water combined in one purpose. Only by their harmony can it be made whole again." "The elements?" Dumbledore mused. "Then I must seek them within the castle itself." Slytherin's image began to fade. "Beware the serpent in your midst, Dumbledore," he said softly, his voice echoing like a hiss. "The one who broke the seal walks even now beneath your roof." The spirit vanished. The chamber fell silent once more. Dumbledore stood alone in the damp air, the torchlight trembling around him. He understood the warning well enough. Someone inside Hogwarts had performed the forbidden ritual, and unless he found them soon, the heart would shatter and the dragon would rise. That night, storms gathered once again above the castle. The rain beat hard against the windows, and thunder rolled through the halls. Dumbledore walked the corridors alone, deep in thought, the hem of his cloak brushing across the cold flagstones. The portraits whispered as he passed, recognizing the gravity in his step. He paused at the entrance to the library. The door stood slightly ajar, light flickering within. He entered quietly. There, among the towering shelves, stood a figure, tall, cloaked, their wand raised over an open book that glowed with pale blue light. The words on its pages writhed like living things. "Good evening," Dumbledore said calmly. The figure froze, then turned. Beneath the hood, the face was pale and narrow, eyes bright with feverish intensity. "Headmaster," the wizard said softly, "I wondered when you'd come." "Professor Carrow," Dumbledore replied, recognizing him now. "You have been dabbling in powers that are not your own." Carrow's mouth twisted. "Not my own? You of all people should understand, Dumbledore. The Founder's magic still sleeps beneath our feet. Why should we not claim it? Why should one beast keep its treasures hidden forever?" "The dragon guards because it must," said Dumbledore. "The magic it protects is not meant for our kind." Carrow laughed, a thin, bitter sound. "And yet Grindelwald nearly mastered it. Imagine, Headmaster, power drawn from the very heart of the elements. We could rebuild the world." "You would destroy it," Dumbledore said, his voice quiet but unyielding. "Tell me what you did to the heart." Carrow's eyes glimmered. "I cracked its seal, just enough to wake the Guardian. When it breaks fully, the heart's energy will be mine." Dumbledore's wand flashed, and a jet of light struck Carrow's hand, sending the wand flying. But even as it clattered to the floor, the book burst into blue fire. Carrow screamed, and the flames consumed both him and the tome in a single blinding flare. When the light faded, nothing remained but ash. The smell of burnt parchment filled the air. Dumbledore closed his eyes, grief heavy upon him. Whatever secret Carrow had uncovered, it had gone with him into the void. And yet, somewhere deep in the lake, the dragon stirred again. Its roar echoed faintly through the night, shaking the very stones of the castle. Dumbledore stood at the window, watching lightning tear across the sky. "The second night begins," he whispered, "and the heart weakens still." Fawkes landed beside him, feathers shining like dawn against the dark. "Then we must hurry," Dumbledore said, "before the storm becomes the end of all things." The storm did not cease with morning. It grew instead, pounding against the castle walls, as though the heavens themselves had turned upon Hogwarts. Waves crashed against the shores of the black lake, and the air shimmered with strange light. The Mer people did not rise that day. Their songs had fallen silent. The forbidden forest, too, seemed to crouch in uneasy stillness, its branches dripping and still. Dumbledore walked the highest ramparts before dawn, his cloak whipping around him in the wind. He stared down upon the lake, its surface broken and wild, and thought of the words the dragon had spoken. 3 nights. 1 had passed, 2 remained. Beneath those waters, the heart of water was breaking, and when it shattered, so too would the fragile peace that held Hogwarts together. He descended to his office with purpose. On his desk, several letters lay sealed, messages to the ministry, to trusted allies, to those who must know should he fail. But there was no time to wait for help. The heart could not be moved. It must be repaired where it lay. And to do so, Dumbledore would need what Slytherin had spoken of, the unity of the elements. The castle itself had always been a nexus of such powers. The Founders had woven their magic into its stones. Gryffindor's fire, Hufflepuff's earth, Ravenclaw's air, Slytherin's water. If balance could be restored even for a moment, it might heal the heart. But gathering such forces was no small task. He summoned Snape and McGonagall once more, their faces drawn from sleeplessness. "We must call upon the castle itself," he told them. "The Founders left traces of their power in the oldest chambers. We will need them all." McGonagall frowned. "Then we must split our efforts." "Indeed," said Dumbledore. Severus, you know the lower passages better than any living soul. Seek Slytherin's relics, the remnants of his power. Minerva, find the hearth beneath the great hall where Gryffindor's flame was said to burn eternal. I will begin with Ravenclaw's tower. They nodded without question. Trust in times such as these was as vital as breath. When they departed, Dumbledore ascended the long spiral stairs to the tower that bore Ravenclaw's name. The storm pressed hard against the high windows, rattling their leaded panes, and the bronze eagle knocker gleamed faintly in the lightning's flash. "Where wisdom sleeps," he murmured, and the door opened before him. Inside, the air shimmered with faint blue light. The walls were lined with shelves of ancient tomes, their pages whispering softly as though stirred by unseen hands. In the center of the room floated a sphere of air, pure and bright, swirling like captured wind. Dumbledore raised his wand. "Ravenclaw's breath, lend me thy strength," he said. The sphere pulsed, then drifted toward him, surrounding him in a gentle wind that smelled of rain and parchment. He felt knowledge and clarity flow through him, cool, sharp, endless. With a single word, he bound the essence into a crystal phial, sealing it with a twist of silver thread. "1," he murmured. "3 remain." Elsewhere in the castle, Snape descended deep beneath the dungeons where water dripped through cracks in the stone. The air grew heavy with the scent of damp earth and age. He passed forgotten doors, their hinges rusted, until at last he found what he sought, a narrow chamber lit by eerie green glow. Upon a pedestal lay a serpent carved of obsidian, its eyes set with emeralds that burned with inner light. "The gift of my house," Snape said softly. He drew his wand, whispering an incantation lost to all but Slytherin's heirs. The serpent's eyes flared, and liquid magic flowed forth, forming a coil of shimmering water that hung suspended in the air. He captured it within a vial of glass and sealed it. High above, McGonagall stood before the hearth of the great hall. The fire there had burned since the school's founding, though none could say how. Now it crackled low, as though sensing the unease that haunted the castle. She drew her wand and whispered an invocation in the old tongue of the Highlands. The flames rose golden and fierce until they formed the shape of a lion's mane. "By Gryffindor's courage," she whispered, "lend your strength." The fire drew inward, folding itself into a small flame that hovered above her hand. She placed it within a copper charm and turned toward the stair, her eyes bright with the reflection of its light. Meanwhile, Dumbledore made his way to the greenhouses, for Hufflepuff's essence was said to rest in the living earth itself. The storm had eased into cold rain, soaking the grass and filling the air with the scent of soil. He knelt upon the ground beside an ancient oak whose roots twisted around the stones of the courtyard. "Helga," he murmured, "your kindness built this home. Lend me the strength of your soil, that I may preserve what you began." The ground glowed faintly beneath his hand. Golden light seeped upward, curling around his fingers like tendrils of ivy. It solidified into a stone, smooth and warm, which he placed beside the other vials. When night fell, the three met again in the headmaster's office. The wind howled outside and thunder rumbled like distant drums. Upon the desk lay the 4 relics: the vial of air, the vial of water, the charm of fire, and the stone of earth. Together they glimmered softly as though recognizing one another. "Now," said Dumbledore, "we must take them to the lake." They moved through the rain with without hesitation, the storm bending around them like a living barrier. The water's edge boiled with light, and deep beneath the dragon stirred once more. Its voice rose faintly through the wind. 2 nights gone, wizard. 1 remains. Dumbledore held his wand high. Tonight we restore what was broken. The 3 of them stepped into the shallows where the lake glowed with eerie luminescence. The relics floated before them, each radiating its own hue, blue, green, gold, and silver white. Dumbledore began to chant in a language older than English, words that resonated with the elements themselves. The ground trembled. Lightning lanced across the sky, striking the surface of the lake. The relics flared, sending beams of light down into the depths. For a moment, Dumbledore felt hope rise within him, the old harmony returning. Then from below came a roar so immense it shattered the spell. The relics flared violently and were flung from their hands. Waves rose, tossing them backward. The lake split open, and a vast shadow surged upward. The water dragon burst from the depths, its body a storm of current and foam, eyes blazing gold. The water itself seemed to obey its will, spiraling around its coiled form. "You seek to bind me again," it thundered, "but the heart is already breaking. You cannot save what is doomed." Dumbledore raised his wand, voice steady, though the rain lashed his face. "I seek not to bind you, but to heal what others wounded. If the heart dies, so will you." The dragon's roar shook the mountains. "Then I will die free." It plunged back into the lake, vanishing beneath the surface. The waters closed, still boiling with fury. Snape pulled himself from the mud, coughing. "We have failed." Dumbledore's gaze remained on the water. "Not yet," he said quietly. "There is still 1 night left." Lightning flashed again, and in that brief white light he saw something glimmer far below, a faint blue radiance at the bottom of the lake. The heart still pulsed, though faintly. And Dumbledore knew then that the final night would decide the fate of Hogwarts itself. The dawn that followed was thin and pale, as though the sun itself feared to rise above the storm-darkened lake. The rain had softened to a mist, but the air trembled with hidden power. Within the walls of Hogwarts, torches guttered, and wands flickered without cause, their magic faltering like hearts uncertain of their next beat. The castle groaned faintly, its stones whispering as if remembering old promises. Dumbledore had not slept. All through the night he had walked the corridors, cloak trailing behind him, lost in thought. Each portrait he passed bowed low, though none dared speak. In the faint light of morning he stood once more before the lake, his reflection broken and wavering on its restless surface. Beneath those gray waters the dragon waited, vast and ancient, its fury coiled like lightning before a storm. The relics lay ruined. Of the 4 elements he'd gathered, only fragments remained. The vial of air was cracked, its contents long vanished into the wind. The charm of fire had dimmed to ash. The stone of earth had split cleanly in 2. Only the vial of water still held its shape, though it pulsed now with a darker light, as though it too was falling under the dragon's sway. He carried them all back to his office and laid them upon the desk. Fawkes watched from his perch, feathers ruffled, eyes bright with unease. "We have but 1 night, Dumbledore said softly. 1 night to mend the heart, or all will fall." A knock sounded at the door. Snape entered, robes dripping from the rain, his face drawn. The students grow restless. They can feel it, even if they do not understand. The lake is rising. Water seeps into the lower halls. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Evacuate the dungeons. Move the younger years to the towers. And Severus, bring me the pensive from my study. There is something I must remember. Snape hesitated, studying him. You intend to face it again, don't you? I intend, Dumbledore replied, to keep my promise. When Snape departed, Dumbledore placed the relics beside the pensive and drew forth his wand. Silvery threads of memory streamed from his temple, sinking into the basin like starlight into still water. Scenes flickered before him. Grindelwald's smirk beneath the shadow of Nurmengard, the flash of the Elder Wand, the crystal shard clutched in his rival's hand. The Heart of Water, Grindelwald had named it Tideborn, a relic said to grant mastery over all flowing magic. But even he had feared its hunger. It drew not only upon the sea and storm, but upon the heart of its wielder. It was alive in its way, and when bound to the dragon, it had become both prison and soul. To heal it, Dumbledore murmured, I must give it what it lacks. Balance, not bondage. He looked toward Fawkes. The phoenix tilted his head, and in that moment Dumbledore understood. The creature of flame would lend him what fire he had lost, not the fury of destruction, but the warmth of rebirth. By dusk, the rain had ceased. The air hung heavy, waiting. Clouds pressed low, streaked with dull red light. Down by the lake, Dumbledore found McGonagall directing the evacuation. She turned as he approached, her expression tight with worry. Albus, she said, the lake floods by the minute. We cannot hold it back. I beg you, whatever you mean to do, do it now. He placed a hand on her shoulder. When the moment comes, seal the castle. No one must come near the water. Not even you? I go where I must. Before she could protest, he turned and strode toward the shore. His wand glimmered with pale blue light, and Fawkes soared above him, leaving a trail of gold in the dim sky. The mist parted around them, and the lake lay open like a wound. With a single word, Dumbledore stepped upon its surface. Magic spread from his feet, freezing the water beneath him into silver glass. Slowly, he walked toward the center, the mist swirling like veils around him. When he reached the point where the depth was greatest, he raised his wand and struck the water. It opened before him, forming a spiraling path downward. He descended once more into the cold dark, the light of his wand cutting through the gloom. The deeper he went, the louder the heartbeat became, a slow, thunderous rhythm that shook the very water. At last he saw it, the Heart of Water. It floated in a hollow of stone, cracked and bleeding blue light, its edges pulsing like a living thing. Around it coiled the water dragon, vast and terrible, its eyes twin suns in the dark. You return, the dragon's voice echoed in his mind, heavy as the sea itself. Why persist, wizard? The heart dies. The chains are gone. Soon I will rise, and the lake will drown your tower of stone. Perhaps, Dumbledore said quietly, but if you rise thus, you will perish with it. The dragon's laughter rolled like thunder. Better to die free than sleep forever in darkness. Freedom without peace is only another kind of prison, Dumbledore replied. Let me heal the heart. It was made not to bind you, but to protect the balance between your world and ours. Lies! The dragon roared, and its tail lashed through the water, stirring currents so fierce they nearly tore him from his footing. Men crave only dominion. You will not deceive me. Dumbledore lifted his wand, not to strike, but to cast forth the relics. The broken vials and charms rose around him, glowing once more. From each, faint light streamed toward the heart. "These are not the power of men," he said. "They are the legacy of those who built this place, of courage, patience, knowledge, and cunning. 4, bound as one, the same bond that once held you in peace." The dragon paused, its golden eyes flickering with confusion. Around them the currents slowed, the relics brightened, and the air filled with a hum like distant song. Fox descended through the water, wings blazing with fire that did not burn. His flame met the blue of the heart, and light burst outward in a cascade of colors. Gold, green, and silver mingled with sapphire. The dragon reared back, roaring in pain, or perhaps in release. Dumbledore felt the magic rush through him, fierce and wild, pulling at the edges of his strength. "Hold fast," he shouted, though there was no one to hear. "Balance, not bondage. Harmony, not chains." The heart pulsed once, twice, then split open in a blinding flare. The shockwave hurled Dumbledore backward. When his vision cleared, the cavern had changed. The dragon floated before him, its form smaller now, almost translucent, as though made of mist and moonlight. "You have mended what was broken," it said softly. "The heart is free, and so am I. You have given me peace, wizard." "Then the lake shall rest once more," Dumbledore said, breathing hard. "Yes." The dragon's voice faded like the tide receding from shore. "But remember this, peace bought by mercy must be guarded by wisdom. Do not let men forget. Its body dissolved into light, which sank into the heart. The crystal reformed, whole and gleaming before sinking gently into the lake bed. The waters calmed. Dumbledore floated upward, guided by Fawkes's golden fire. When he broke the surface, the storm had passed. The moon shone clear and white, reflected perfectly upon the still water. He stepped onto the shore, weary but unbroken. McGonagall waited at the gates, relief plain in her eyes. "Is it done?" she asked. "It is," Dumbledore replied. "The dragon sleeps in peace, and the heart holds true." Fawkes landed upon his shoulder, trilling softly. Behind them, the lake shimmered with quiet light, calm once more after centuries of unrest. Yet Dumbledore looked long upon it, knowing well that such peace was never permanent. For in the world of magic, even silence has memory, and water remembers everything. For 3 days and nights after the battle beneath the lake, Hogwarts lay in a hush, unlike any it had known in living memory. The students whispered of strange lights seen under the water, of music carried on the mist, and of the headmaster who walked the shore alone long after midnight. The storm had passed, the air was clean and cool once more, yet the castle seemed to breathe with slow relief, as though it too had survived a great wound. Dumbledore moved quietly through the corridors, his step measured and thoughtful. His robes still smelled faintly of rain and the salt of deep water. The sleepless nights had drawn faint shadows under his eyes, but there was a new calm in him, a stillness born not of victory but of understanding. He had glimpsed something ancient and terrible, and had lived to carry its memory. In his office, the silver instruments that lined the shelves hummed softly, as if sensing that the world had shifted by some invisible degree. Fawkes perched beside the window, feathers sleek once more, his song warm and clear. When Dumbledore lifted his gaze, the sunlight streaming through the glass caught on the curve of the phoenix's wing and turned the air to gold. "Peace is fragile, my friend," he said softly. "Yet it is peace, nonetheless." Still, there was no mistaking the signs of what the dragon's awakening had cost. The lower vaults of the castle were flooded and half ruined. their stones soaked with the residue of magic. Several mirror people from the lake had vanished, their coral dwellings shattered. The ancient wards that had shielded the school for centuries flickered and trembled, leaving small gaps that Dumbledore could feel like drafts beneath the door. Repairs had begun, of course. The professors worked without complaint, guided by his quiet word and steady hand. Students whispered and speculated, but lessons resumed, and soon the ordinary rhythm of classes and meals began to return. The storm was spoken of as a great enchantment gone awry, or as a mere curiosity of the weather. Hogwarts had always thrived on mystery, and this one would sink, like so many others, into legend. Yet Dumbledore knew the truth. The heart of water still slept beneath the lake, and the dragon's spirit slumbered within it. Such peace could not last forever. Power that old never simply faded. It waited, patient as time itself. On the fourth night, as moonlight silvered the towers, Dumbledore descended once more to the lakeside. He carried no wand, no spell book, only a small stone sphere he had taken from the ruins of the chamber below. It gleamed faintly in his palm, pulsing with the same rhythm as the lake's gentle waves. When he reached the water's edge, he stopped. The surface was smooth and black, a mirror to the stars above. "Old friend," he said quietly, his voice barely carrying over the ripple of the wind. "You sleep again. Let it be so for many ages." The lake stirred only once, sending a faint circle of ripples outward from where he stood. Dumbledore watched them fade and turned away. As he made his way back toward the castle, he found McGonagall waiting at the gate, her cloak drawn tight against the chill. "You should rest, Albus," she said. "Rest is the habit of those who feel secure," he replied with a faint smile, "and I do not yet trust this calm." "You've done what none else could," she said. "The school stands because of you." "For now," he murmured, but something more was awoken that night, not within the lake, but within me. She studied him, uncertain. "What do you mean?" "The heart of water mirrors the soul of its keeper," he said. "When I touched it, I felt the echo of its memory. The founders made it from the harmony of all things, earth, fire, air, and water. But balance demands all be equal, and I fear something of that balance is gone from this world." "Then we will restore it," she said firmly. He smiled again, that small knowing curve of the mouth that could mean both sorrow and hope. "Perhaps we shall. But it will take more than spells to mend what time unravels." They stood together in silence for a while, watching the mist drift across the grounds. From the forbidden forest came the faint cry of a centaur's horn, low and mournful. Inside the castle, the fires burned low. Students slept, unaware of the conversation that passed between their teachers, or of the magic that hummed quietly beneath their feet. Yet in the quietest corners of the night, the castle seemed to whisper. Tapestries swayed without wind, portraits stirred in their frames, and somewhere deep in the dungeons, a slow dripping echoed like the beat of a distant drum. In the days that followed, life at Hogwarts resumed its gentle rhythm. The younger students forgot their fear. The older ones spoke of the night of the storm as a tale to impress the first years. But Dumbledore's thoughts lingered on the warning the dragon had left him. Peace bought by mercy must be guarded by wisdom. Those words became a refrain in his mind. He wrote them in a small, leather-bound book that he kept hidden beneath his desk. A record of lessons learned not from men but from the ancient powers of the world. Weeks passed, and the scars of the storm began to fade. The great lake returned to its familiar stillness. Mer people rebuilt their coral towers, and the squid once more glided lazily beneath the surface. Yet sometimes, when the evening light turned gold and the air was utterly calm, ripples would form without wind, spreading slowly outward as though stirred by a vast, invisible breath. The professors dismissed it as harmless. The students called it the dragon's dream. Dumbledore alone knew it for what it was, a reminder that the balance he had restored was delicate. He would often pause during his walks, gaze upon the lake, and see within it reflections of moments yet to come. Fire in a great hall, a boy with lightning on his brow, a serpent's shadow twisting through the dark. Fawkes would perch on his shoulder then, letting out a quiet, questioning trill. "Yes," Dumbledore would whisper, "I see it too. Storms do not end, my friend. They merely change their shape." On one such evening, as the first snow began to fall across the grounds, he stood once more beside the black lake. The castle's windows glowed behind him warm and bright, the laughter of students faintly audible through the cold. The world seemed for a fleeting moment safe again. He reached into his robes and drew out the stone sphere he had carried since that night. It pulsed once, then dissolved into light, sinking gently into the earth at his feet. "Rest well," he said, "and may you never wake in anger again." The wind shifted, carrying with it the faintest echo of a dragon's sigh, soft as a wave upon the shore. Dumbledore turned back toward the castle, his robes whispering through the snow. Behind him, the lake lay calm, but beneath its mirrored surface, a faint glimmer stirred, the sleeping heart of something vast, eternal, and waiting. The water remembers everything, and though it slept, it dreamed still of freedom. Winter deepened across the highlands, cloaking the grounds of Hogwarts in white silence. Snow drifted in slow, patient spirals past the windows, settling upon the battlements like soft feathers. The lake, once wild and furious, now slumbered beneath a skin of ice. Even the Mer people had retreated deeper into their realm, their songs distant and muted. For most within the castle, peace had returned. Students laughed in the corridors once more, filling the air with warmth and light. Lessons resumed, and the world seemed to right itself. But Albus Dumbledore, though outwardly calm, felt the tremor beneath that stillness, the faint pulse of something waiting. He had always known that peace, like magic, was never permanent. Every act of restoration carried its shadow. The dragon had given him warning enough. Peace bought by mercy must be guarded by wisdom. He repeated those words often, quietly, as he walked through the frost-laced gardens or along the moonlit corridors of the castle. The echoes of that night beneath the lake haunted him still. At times, when the wind blew from the west and the ice creaked upon the water, he fancied he could hear the slow beating of wings beneath the frozen surface, a dream of the dragon that once had been. One such evening, Dumbledore stood alone upon the astronomy tower. The sky stretched vast and clear, scattered with cold stars. The moon hung low, its light spilling silver across the grounds. He leaned upon the parapet, watching the faint mist that rose from the forest below. Behind him came the soft sound of footsteps. Professor Snape emerged from the shadows, his cloak trailing darkly over the stones. "You called for me," he said, his voice low. Dumbledore nodded. "I have been studying the wards of the lake," he said. "They mend but slowly. There is something within the water, A remnant of the dragon's power that resists complete healing? Snape's expression was unreadable. You fear it will wake again? Not yet, Dumbledore said, turning to face him. But I feel a resonance. Magic of this age is weaker than it once was, Severus. The ancient enchantments that bind Hogwarts were forged when wizards still spoke the old tongue with reverence. Time wears even on such things. Snape crossed his arms. You speak as if the school itself were alive. Perhaps it is, Dumbledore said, eyes twinkling faintly despite the weariness in them. Hogwarts has memory and heart. It feels. When the dragon stirred, so did the castle. Its magic flared in answer, fearful, protective, perhaps even sorrowful. Snape frowned. Then what do you propose we do? Recast the wards? That would take power even you may not possess. I do not seek to strengthen them by force, Dumbledore replied, but by harmony, by remembering what was lost. The founders built this place not as fortress, but as sanctuary. It must remember its purpose. The younger man's eyes glimmered in the starlight. And if the dragon spirit has not truly gone? Dumbledore was silent for a long moment. Then he said, then perhaps it is not meant to go. Perhaps its presence keeps the balance. The lake's guardian was not evil, Severus. It was only bound, misunderstood. Snape gave a quiet, skeptical hum. And what of those who would use that power again? There will always be those who seek it. Indeed, Dumbledore said softly. That is the burden of knowledge. Power calls to those who desire it most, and fear calls to those who cannot master it. Our task is to ensure neither call is answered. The two men stood in silence for a time, the snow falling softly between them. Then Snape bowed his head and withdrew, leaving Dumbledore alone with the stars. The days that followed brought more snow, and with it strange occurrences. Twice, students swore they saw something move beneath the ice of the lake, a long shadow that glided like smoke beneath glass. Once, Hagrid found a section of the shoreline thawed though the air was freezing. And once, in the dead of night, the portraits along the northern corridor began to hum, as if some deep vibration passed through the stones. Dumbledore investigated each disturbance personally. He found nothing, but each time he returned to his office, the instruments on his shelves spun and whirred as if agitated by unseen wind. Fawkes grew restless, his songs alternating between joy and sorrow. Then, one evening, Dumbledore dreamed. He stood again beneath the lake, though this time the water glowed faintly with light. Before him drifted the heart of water, whole and perfect once more. Within its crystalline depths, shapes moved, flickers of faces, waves, skies. Then came the dragon, smaller now, almost transparent. It looked upon him not with anger, but with a kind of weary wisdom. The balance holds, it said in a voice that echoed like distant surf. But the wound between worlds is never closed forever. Others will come to test it again. Others? Dumbledore asked. Who? The dragon's form blurred, its voice fading. The ones who hunger. They will come as they always do. Guard well the heart, wizard of stone. It binds more than you know. When Dumbledore awoke, the dawn light filtered pale through his windows. The crystal instruments were still. The castle seemed to sleep deeply, unaware of his dream. But upon his desk, where no one had placed it, lay a single scale, silver blue, thin as glass, cool to the touch. It shimmered faintly as though alive. He knew at once what it was. The dragon's last gift, or its last warning. He sealed the scale within a crystal phial and placed it inside the deepest drawer of his desk. Only he could open it, and even he hesitated to touch it again, for though it glowed softly, the magic within it felt immense, older than the school, older perhaps than wizards themselves. Spring came slowly, thawing the lake and the snow. Flowers broke through the soil, and the cries of owls filled the twilight once more. The memory of the storm faded into story. A legend whispered among the students about the spirit of the lake, and the night Dumbledore tamed it. But the headmaster knew the truth was far larger than any tale. When he walked along the water's edge at dusk, the waves would lap gently at the shore, and sometimes, just sometimes, he fancied he could hear a voice in their rhythm. Guard well the heart. And he did. Through all the years that followed, the wars, the deaths, the triumphs and losses, he never forgot the dragon's words. For deep beneath the black lake, the heart of water still pulsed with light, and in its depths, something vast and ancient dreamed. Watching, waiting, remembering, summer settled upon the highlands like a gentle enchantment. The snows had melted from the hills, the air was thick with the scent of heather and pine, and the sunlight danced upon the surface of the black lake. Hogwarts gleamed golden beneath the long days, its towers mirrored in the still water. Yet beneath the beauty of that season lay the memory of all that had passed. The dragon's roar, the storm's fury, the glimmer of the heart deep below. Albus Dumbledore often took his walks at dawn now, when the mist lay thin upon the grass and the castle slept still. He would pause by the lake, watching the ripples spread, his thoughts heavy with both peace and foreboding. The heart of water was whole, the dragon's spirit at rest, but in magic, as in men's hearts, rest never meant permanence. The castle, too, seemed aware of this. It sighed and settled in the night, as if the stones themselves remembered the strain of holding back the lake's wrath. The merpeople had rebuilt their coral spires, yet Dumbledore sometimes saw strange lights glimmer beneath the surface, pale blues and greens that faded as quickly as thought. He said nothing of it to the others. The students had long since forgotten their fear. They spoke of the storm as if it had been a dream, and spent their days in the warm air of the courtyards, playing, studying, laughing. Only the headmaster and a few of the teachers remembered how close their world had come to ruin. One evening, as twilight painted the lake in hues of violet and gold, Dumbledore received a visitor. He had been seated at his desk, lost in thought, when the familiar rustle of feathers and a knock at the window drew his gaze. An owl, large and gray, bearing the seal of the ministry, waited there. He opened the window, took the letter, and broke the seal. The parchment was official, written in careful, clipped handwriting. Headmaster Dumbledore, it began. An anomaly has been detected in the magical ley lines beneath Hogwarts. The Department of Mysteries requests your assessment. We suspect a surge of elemental magic, possibly residual from last winter's disturbances. We await your counsel. Dumbledore sighed softly, folding the letter. So, he murmured, the ripples have reached even them. He called for Fawkes, who flared into life upon his perch in a shimmer of flame. My friend, he said, it seems our work is not yet done. Let us see what stirs beneath. That night, after the castle had gone dark, Dumbledore took his wand and descended to the edge of the black lake. The moon was full, its light turning the waters to glass. The air was still, too still. Even the insects had fallen silent. He raised his wand, murmuring a spell that shimmered like heat on the horizon. The surface of the lake rippled, and before his eyes, faint lines of light appeared, tracing patterns across the water. They pulsed with life like veins beneath translucent skin. The ley lines of Hogwarts, ancient conduits of magic, converged here beneath the lake. Yet now one of them flickered, its light unstable. Something disturbed the flow. He extended his senses, feeling along the current, and at once the vision came, a flash of the cavern beneath the water, the heart of water glowing bright, and around it shadows shifting, circling. Not the dragon, but something smaller, colder. When the vision faded, he stood motionless. Whatever moved below was not born of the lake. It was drawn there, feeding on the power the dragon had left behind. The next day he summoned Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Flitwick to his office. The morning light slanted through the tall windows, casting pale gold upon the floor. "There is disturbance in the ley lines," he told them. "Something feeds upon the magic of the heart. It must be investigated before it grows." Flitwick's brow furrowed. "A creature?" "Perhaps," Dumbledore said. "Or perhaps a remnant of Caro's failed enchantment. Dark magic rarely dies cleanly." Snape leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Then we must destroy it." "Not yet," Dumbledore replied. "If we strike blindly, we may harm the balance the dragon left behind. This will require care." McGonagall's lips pressed into a thin line. "How do you mean to reach it?" "The caverns are sealed." Dumbledore smiled faintly. "Nothing in Hogwarts remains sealed forever." That evening, as the sun sank red behind the mountains, they gathered upon the lakeshore once more. Fawkes circled above them, his cry carrying across the still air. With a gesture, Dumbledore drew a circle upon the ground, a perfect ring of light. He touched his wand to it, and the earth trembled faintly. "Stand close," he said. "We go where few have walked twice." The circle flared, and the world dissolved into water and light. In an instant they stood within the cavern beneath the lake. The heart of water floated before them, pulsing faintly, its glow filling the chamber with blue radiance. At first all seemed calm, then the shadows began to move. Shapes emerged, thin, eel-like forms, glimmering with sickly green light. They circled the heart, their movements graceful and wrong, their eyes black as night. "Spectral leeches," Snape whispered, "spawned from corrupted magic." Flitwick raised his wand. "They feed upon enchantment itself." Dumbledore stepped forward. "Hold," he said softly. "Let me speak first." The leeches hissed, their forms flickering between water and mist. He could feel their hunger cold and endless. "You cannot feed here," he said. "This magic is not yours." But the creatures only circled faster, drawn by the light of his wand. Their voices came as one, thin, whispering, desperate. Power, warmth, life. "They are remnants of the breaking," McGonagall said, her voice tight. "They will drain the heart if we do not stop them." Dumbledore nodded once. "Then we shall remind them what life feels like." He raised his wand, and Fawkes descended in a burst of fire, the phoenix's cry splitting the silence. Flame met water, yet neither was quenched. The light spread through the chamber, warm and golden. The leeches shrieked, twisting in agony, their forms unraveling in the glow. One by one, they dissolved, their whispers fading into nothing. The cavern brightened, the heart of water pulsing steadily once more. When the last shadow vanished, Dumbledore lowered his wand. Steam curled through the water, faint and sweet, Fawkes landed upon his shoulder, his feathers shimmering with the last of the light. "It is done," Dumbledore said quietly. "The balance holds again." McGonagall looked around the chamber. "For now," she said. "For now," he agreed. They ascended in silence, the circle carrying them back to the moonlit shore. The lake rippled softly, and for a moment, Dumbledore thought he saw a shape beneath the surface, a vast shadow turning once, then disappearing into the deep. "Peace," he whispered, "is never eternal, but while it lasts, it must be cherished." Fawkes gave a soft trill, and the sound carried far over the lake. Above them, the stars shimmered, bright and distant, and beneath their light the water slept once more. Yet in the depths, the dragon's heart glowed faintly, as if listening, as if dreaming still, and Hogwarts, ancient and wise, stood watchful upon its shores, guardian of both wonder and warning, waiting for whatever tide the future might bring. Autumn came quietly to Hogwarts, its arrival marked not by storms, but by the soft whisper of leaves falling through the courtyards. Gold and crimson drifted across the lawns, and the scent of wood smoke hung in the air. The lake, once bright beneath the summer sun, now darkened to a mirror of iron gray. Mists rolled from its surface at dawn, curling around the roots of the mountains, and in the distance the cries of migrating birds echoed like faint farewells. For a time the peace seemed complete. The students returned to their lessons, the teachers to their daily work, and the castle thrummed once more with the rhythm of ordinary magic. Yet Dumbledore, ever watchful, could not forget what he had seen beneath the lake. Though the spectral leeches had been banished, a trace of their corruption lingered in the air, a faint trembling that no spell could quite dispel. He often stood by his window in the early hours, when all the world was quiet, and gazed upon the water below. Fawkes perched beside him, his warmth a steady presence in the cold light of dawn. "It sleeps," Dumbledore would murmur, "but sleep is not death. It dreams of what was lost, and dreams can awaken." One morning, as mist crept low across the grounds, a knock came at his office door. Professor McGonagall entered, a roll of parchment clutched tightly in her hand. "A letter," she said, her voice grim. "From the Ministry again." Dumbledore broke the seal and read. His eyes narrowed slightly. "The Department of Mysteries reports fluctuations in the magical currents once more. They fear the lake may be the source." "They meddle without understanding," McGonagall said sharply. "Do they wish to stir it up again?" "They will not," Dumbledore said quietly. "I will see to it myself." She hesitated, watching him. "Albus, you cannot carry all this burden alone. Whatever dwells beneath that lake, it has touched you deeply. I see it in your eyes." He smiled faintly, though his gaze remained distant. "Perhaps it has. But someone must keep the memory of it. Someone must listen when the water speaks." The following night he walked the shores once more. The moon was full, its reflection broken by the slow rise of mist. Each breath of wind seemed to carry whispers, soft, half-heard, like the echo of waves in a seashell. He closed his eyes. The sound grew clearer, words formed within the silence. Balance, falters, guard the heart. He opened his eyes to see the water glowing faintly with blue light. The surface rippled, though no wind stirred it. From beneath came a soft, rhythmic pulse, as though the lake itself breathed. Dumbledore raised his wand. A silver light arced across the water, revealing for an instant the shape of something vast and serpentine deep below. The dragon's spirit, But it was dimmer now, its form frayed at the edges, dissolving into the water that had once held it whole. "What troubles you?" he whispered. The answer came as a feeling more than words, a weight of sorrow, of fading strength. The heart weakens, the circle breaks. Then it was gone, the lake still once more. Dumbledore stood motionless for a long time. The night was bitter cold, the stars distant and sharp. Finally he turned back toward the castle, his mind already racing. In the weeks that followed, he delved once more into the archives, seeking anything that spoke of the heart's nature. Ancient tomes whispered of the circle of elements, a balance maintained by four forces bound together. When one waned, the others must renew it, or all would fall to ruin. He gathered Snape, Flitwick, and McGonagall again, this time in the glow of candlelight beneath the great hall's vaulted ceiling. The flames of the torches danced, their light reflecting off the polished floor like liquid gold. "The heart is not eternal," Dumbledore said, voice low. "Its harmony fades. The founders built this place to maintain the balance, but centuries have dulled its song." Flitwick frowned. "You mean the enchantments that guard the castle draw power from the heart itself?" "Not directly," Dumbledore said, "but they are bound by kinship. If the heart fails, the wards will falter, and Hogwarts will stand unprotected." McGonagall's eyes flashed. "Then we must renew the circle," he nodded. "We must summon the elements once more, fire, earth, air, and water, in harmony, not in opposition. But this time, it cannot be done by force. It must be gifted freely by each of us." "Gifted?" Snape's tone was skeptical. "Magic demands precision, not sentiment." Dumbledore smiled faintly. "And yet, Severus, it is sentiment that keeps the world alive. Courage, loyalty, wisdom, cunning, the same virtues that founded this school. We must each give of what we embody most, or the circle will not close." For a moment silence filled the hall. Then McGonagall drew her wand, her voice firm. "Then let us begin." They moved to the courtyard where the four paths of the castle met. The moon hung above them, bright and watchful. Dumbledore traced a circle in the air, wide enough to encompass them all. Symbols flared upon the ground, runic lines that pulsed with soft light. McGonagall stepped forward first. "By the courage of those who stand for others, I offer flame." Her wand ignited, and a stream of fire spiraled upward, burning bright and steady. Snape followed, his voice dark but resolute. "By cunning and the will to endure, I offer water." The air shimmered and droplets rose from the mist, forming a veil of silver rain. Flitwick's turn came next. "By wisdom and craft, I offer air." A gust swept through the courtyard, lifting the flames higher without quenching them. Then Dumbledore raised his hand. "By faith in all living things, I offer earth." The stones beneath them glowed, roots of light threading outward from his feet. The elements twined together, forming a sphere of pure brilliance above the circle. For an instant, Hogwarts itself seemed to breathe. The air thickened with the hum of ancient power. The lake responded, its surface glowing like molten glass. Then the light sank downward, vanishing into the depths. The spell was done. When silence returned, the stars seemed brighter, the night clearer. The four wizards stood breathing hard, their faces pale but calm. McGonagall glanced at Dumbledore. "Did it work?" He gazed toward the lake. "Yes," he said softly. "For now the balance is restored." The others withdrew, leaving him alone beneath the stars. He remained for a long time, staring at the faint shimmer across the water. In the quiet, he thought he heard a voice again, faint and distant. "Thank you He smiled. "Rest easy," he whispered, and yet deep in his heart, he knew the truth of what the dragon had once told him, that peace is never the end of the story, only a pause between storms. He turned toward the castle, its windows glowing warmly against the night. Above him, the first leaves of autumn swirled on the wind, falling silently into the dark water below, where the heart of water pulsed on, steady, eternal, and dreaming still. Winter returned sooner than expected that year. One morning the castle awoke to a world of white, the lake sealed in glass, the hills lost beneath a quilt of snow. Icicles hung from every tower like spears of crystal, and the air shimmered with frost. The children rejoiced, as children always do, and the halls rang with laughter. Yet Dumbledore, standing at the highest window of his office, felt the cold more deeply than before. It was not the cold of the season, but of something older, something stirring once again beneath the ice. Fawkes perched beside him, feathers fluffed against the chill. His bright eyes never left the lake. "You sense it too," Dumbledore murmured. "The stillness is too perfect." He turned from the window to his desk, where the ancient instruments ticked and chimed, measuring the unseen currents of magic that wound through the air. One of them, a slender silver orb encircled by rings of glass, had begun to spin faster than the rest. The hum it gave off was soft yet deep, resonant enough to make the very floor tremble. Dumbledore bent closer. The glass rings glowed faintly blue, pulsing in rhythm with the lake below. He straightened slowly. So, it begins again. Within hours, subtle changes swept through the castle. Fires burned too brightly, torches hissed, and mirrors fogged with frost, though no breath touched them. The portraits muttered uneasily among themselves, and even Peeves grew quiet, drifting through corridors as though listening to distant thunder. That evening, McGonagall found Dumbledore in the library, surrounded by open tomes and scattered parchment. She moved closer, her sharp eyes tracing the diagrams he had drawn, circles of runes and lines connecting 4 elemental symbols. "What are you seeking now, Albus?" "Patterns," he replied without looking up. "Harmony is never static. It shifts like the seasons. The circle we restored in autumn may already be changing its tune. If one element swells or fades, the heart below responds." "Can it truly break again?" "Everything made can break," he said softly, "even the foundations of magic." Outside wind swept against the tall windows, rattling them in their frames. McGonagall crossed her arms, her expression grim. "You'll not go into that lake again alone." He smiled faintly. "You have my word." Yet when the moon rose, pale and full, Dumbledore walked once more to the shore. He had promised not to go alone, but Fawkes flew at his shoulder, a companion of flame. The snow lay deep and silent, the world painted in silver and shadow. Beneath the ice he could see faint light, flickering blue and gold, pulsing like a heart beneath skin. He raised his wand and whispered an incantation. The ice parted, melting away in a slow spiral. Mist curled upward, and the water below gleamed like liquid glass. For a moment he simply stared, and in the reflection of the moon he thought he saw movement, vast wings unfurling deep within. Then the voice came distant and faint. "Albus Dumbledore." It was not the dragon. This voice was older, quieter, woven through with sorrow. "Who speaks?" he asked, his breath clouding in the air. "I am the memory of the heart," said the voice. "You mended me once, but my strength fades. The balance you forged falters. Something beneath seeks to claim me anew." "Beneath?" darkness older than the guardian you freed. It waits in the deep earth, where no light reaches. It stirs now, drawn by the echoes of the storm you quelled. Dumbledore's hand tightened on his wand. What must be done? The circle must be sealed once more. Fully this time. Not by 4 alone, but by all who dwell within these walls. The school itself must give of its breath, or the darkness will rise. The voice faded like mist, leaving only the soft lapping of water. Dumbledore lowered his wand slowly, his mind alight with purpose. The castle, alive with its own ancient magic, must be made to sing in unity once more. The next day he summoned every professor to the great hall. Candles floated high overhead, their flames burning steady in the cold air. The long tables had been cleared, replaced by a single circle of chalk and rune. "My friends," Dumbledore said, his voice echoing through the vaulted chamber, "there are powers older than Hogwarts, older even than our craft. The storm we survived last year was but a whisper of what lies beneath. If we would keep this school safe, we must bind its heart to ours." Flitwick's brow furrowed. "You mean to enchant the castle itself?" "In a way," Dumbledore replied. "It has a will of its own, shaped by centuries of learning, laughter, and sorrow. If we call to it, it will answer." He raised his wand. "Join me." They formed a circle. McGonagall, Snape, Flitwick, Sprout, and the others, each holding their wand upright. Dumbledore began to chant in the old tongue, words that had not been spoken since the time of the Founders. The air thickened, humming with power. The stones beneath their feet glowed faintly. The castle seemed to awaken. Outside, the lake stirred. The towers shivered, snow sliding from their roofs. Candles flared brighter, and the floating lights of the great hall swayed as though in rhythm with some unseen heartbeat. "Now," Dumbledore cried, his voice rising, "give your magic freely." One by one, the teachers added their voices. Flames leapt from the torches. The floor shone with light. Through the windows, the lake glowed a deep, vivid blue, brighter and brighter, until it seemed the whole world was made of light and water. Then, with a sound like a sigh, the glow subsided. The great hall dimmed once more. For a heartbeat, all was still. From somewhere deep below, the faint call of the dragon's song echoed, peaceful, grateful, enduring. Snape lowered his wand, his expression unreadable. "So, it's done?" "For now," Dumbledore said. "The heart is steady again." They dispersed quietly, their footsteps fading into the corridors. When all had gone, Dumbledore remained, gazing toward the far window, where the lake shimmered faintly beneath the moonlight. "You have done well," he said softly, though no one was there to hear. "Sleep now." The following weeks passed in tranquil rhythm. The snow melted, the days lengthened, and spring crept once more across the grounds. Yet Dumbledore knew better than to trust tranquility. The magic of Hogwarts was vast, and in its depths, secrets yet unspoken waited. Sometimes when he passed the great hall at night, he could still hear faint music humming in the stones, a blend of voices human and not, singing in harmony. It comforted him, even as it warned him. Balance, he knew, was not an end but a rhythm. Give, take, rest, rise. The castle slept, and the lake was calm. But far beneath the foundations, deeper than the dragon's lair, something else stirred. A presence, without name or shape, moving in dreams older than magic itself. And though Dumbledore could not yet see it, he felt its shadow in the quiet between heartbeats, and knew that the story of the Heart of Water was far from finished. The year turned once more, and with it came a quiet unease. Spring's warmth crept over the land, yet the air around Hogwarts carried an undercurrent of restlessness. The castle's wards hummed faintly at night, like the low chords of a harp plucked by unseen fingers. Candles guttered without wind, doors whispered open when no one passed, and the portraits seemed to gaze too long at empty air. Students whispered of strange dreams, of a light shining beneath the lake, and a voice calling softly in languages none could name. The merpeople, when questioned, would not come near the surface. Even the giant squid had vanished from sight, as though the deep had claimed all who once swam within its reach. Albus Dumbledore listened and watched. He moved through the halls with calm grace, yet his eyes held a distant weariness, as if the peace he had wrought last winter were little more than a veil. Each night he visited the shore, tracing the ripples that drifted from the lake's heart. "Not yet," he would murmur to the still water. "Sleep a little longer." But the signs of change grew harder to ignore. A tremor shuddered through the castle one dawn, shaking the great hall and sending shards of frost tumbling from the window panes. In the dungeons, Snape's potions curdled and hissed, reacting to some unseen current in the air. Filch found puddles forming in the lower corridors, though no pipe was broken. The balance that had been restored was shifting again. When Dumbledore gathered the staff once more in the great hall, even the bravest among them seemed uneasy. The floating candles burned blue, their light wan and ghostly. "The Heart of Water has changed," Dumbledore said. "It no longer draws its strength from the circle alone. It has begun to draw from us, from Hogwarts itself." Flitwick looked up sharply. "From us? You mean it feeds on our magic?" "Not feeds," Dumbledore said, "but reflects. The heart was made to mirror the will of those who guard it. It feels our unrest, our fears, and it echoes them. If discord reigns within the castle, it will twist again toward chaos." Snape's expression darkened. "Then perhaps the problem lies not in the lake, but in those who dwell above it." Dumbledore met his gaze calmly. "Perhaps?" McGonagall frowned. "You think the heart responds to our emotions?" "To the spirit of the school," Dumbledore said. "To the unity or division of those who call it home." Silence fell. Even the faint hum of the walls seemed to still. "So," Snape said at last, his tone cutting through the hush, "the fate of Hogwarts depends on whether children can be made to live in perfect harmony." A faint smile touched Dumbledore's lips. "In a manner of speaking, but harmony does not mean silence, Severus. It means understanding." That evening he stood once more upon the frozen edge of the lake, cloak stirring in the wind. "You mirror us," he said softly, gazing into the water. "Then let us show you not fear, but faith." He raised his wand, drawing a slow arc of light over the lake. Fawkes appeared beside him, wings outstretched, his flame illuminating the darkness. Together they sang, not a spell, not an enchantment, but an old melody of Hogwarts, older than any written charm. The lake shimmered, responding to the sound. Beneath its surface, faint lines of silver light began to form, twisting into shapes like runes or constellations. The glow spread outward, soft and steady, but far below, deeper than the light could reach, something moved. It was not the dragon. It was heavier, slower, a shadow that seemed to consume the very light around it. The runes flickered, distorted, and for an instant, the reflection of the moon upon the water darkened, as though blotted by unseen hands. Fawkes cried out, a note of warning, and the light broke. The water surged upward, cold and violent, flinging Dumbledore back upon the shore. When he rose drenched but unharmed, the lake was calm again. The moon shone as before, but the sense of wrongness remained. Something had awakened beneath the heart. The next morning Dumbledore sent word to the Ministry, though he knew no help would come. Few would believe that something older than dragons stirred beneath Hogwarts. He spent the following nights in study, combing through texts so ancient their pages crumbled at his touch. He found mention, at last, of a legend, whispered by the founders themselves, the vein of shadows, a current of pure void that flowed beneath the world, older than all magic, feeding upon the power of creation itself. The founders had chosen the site of Hogwarts to seal one of its openings, a fissure in the fabric of the earth where the vein reached the surface. The heart of water had been forged to contain it, the dragon to guard it. And now, after centuries of stillness, the seal had begun to crack. "This is no longer a matter of balance," Dumbledore murmured. "This is survival." On the third night, when all within the castle slept, he went alone once more to the lake. The moon was veiled, the stars faint. He walked across the ice, his wand light faintly blue, until he reached the center. There he knelt and touched the surface. A deep vibration thrummed through the ground, through his bones, through the air itself. The water beneath the ice was no longer still. It boiled and twisted, as though something vast and unseen turned in its depths. Then the voice came. Not the dragon nor the heart, but something colder. "You sealed me once in water and stone," it whispered. "Now I rise again, for all light weakens, all flame dies. The guardians are gone. The world forgets." Dumbledore's breath misted in the air. "You will not rise," he said, voice calm, though his hand trembled. "You are small, mortal flame. You burn brightly, but briefly. The deep remembers what men forget." The ice groaned beneath him. Cracks spidered outward in every direction. From below came a sound like the beating of enormous wings, but they were not wings. It was the pulse of something without form, pressing upward through the dark. Dumbledore raised his wand high, calling upon every thread of magic that bound Hogwarts together, the wards, the stones, the spirits that lingered in the halls. The light around him blazed, white and gold, searing the mist away. "In the name of the founders," he said, "by the fire of Gryffindor, the soil of Hufflepuff, the breath of Ravenclaw, and the waters of Slytherin, I command you, sleep." The lake erupted. A column of water burst skyward, turning to steam in the light of his spell. The earth trembled, the forest shuddered, and for a heartbeat it seemed the very stars dimmed. Then slowly the light faded. The water fell, the cracks sealed. Silence returned. Dumbledore knelt upon the ice, breath shallow, wand trembling in his hand. He knew what he had done was no victory, only delay. The vein of shadows still stirred, patient and eternal, waiting for its next chance to break free. He looked toward the castle, its towers dark against the horizon. "So it falls to us again?" he whispered, "guardians of what should not be forgotten." Fawkes descended, landing softly upon his shoulder, his warmth chasing away the cold. Together they turned back toward the distant lights of Hogwarts, the faint hum of the wards rising once more to meet them, a fragile harmony against the dark beneath. And beneath the lake, unseen, the heart of water glowed faintly blue, beating like a quiet promise in the deep. But farther still, in the darkness beyond, the vein pulsed once, slow and patient, As though listening, the days that followed were heavy with quiet foreboding. The lake froze and thawed in restless cycles, as if breathing in uneasy sleep. Each night the moon cast its pale light upon the water, and each night Dumbledore watched from the window of his tower, wondering whether the calm was truth or disguise. Within Hogwarts, the old magic that bound the castle began to flicker in strange ways. The staircases shuddered before moving, as though reluctant to obey. The paintings whispered from frame to frame, their voices hushed, warning of sounds in the deep. And the students, sensitive to things adults could not name, grew restless. They dreamed again of water and darkness, of scales beneath moonlight and eyes vast as worlds. Dumbledore moved quietly among them, his steps soft, his gaze warm though shadowed by thought. To the children, he was ever the calm within the storm, but within himself, he carried a weight of knowledge that deepened each day. He could feel the slow stirring of that ancient thing below, the vein of shadows, sealed yet unyielding. Late one evening, he descended into the lower halls, lantern in hand. The dungeons were silent, save for the drip of unseen water. Frost rimed the stones, glittering faintly in the glow of his light. He passed the door of the potions classroom and followed the narrow stairs downward, past where even the Slytherin dormitories lay, into a corridor so old it had been forgotten by most who lived above. Here the air was colder, the walls were carved with runes, eroded by centuries, their meanings half lost. Yet Dumbledore could feel power thrumming through them, the ancient weave of the castle itself. The founders had walked here once. He could sense their touch in the stone. At the corridor's end, a door stood sealed with silver bands. He raised his wand, tracing the ancient sigil of unity, the fourfold cross of flame, earth, wind, and wave. The silver melted away and the door groaned open. Beyond lay a chamber vast as the great hall, but silent as a tomb. The walls were slick with moisture, and the air shimmered faintly blue. In the center stood a dais of black stone, and upon it, half buried in shadow, lay an orb of glass filled with slow-turning light. The Echo Crystal, if the old records were true. It was said to be the listening heart of Hogwarts, a focus through which the castle itself spoke to those who could hear. Dumbledore approached, each step echoing softly. The light within the orb pulsed as he drew near, its glow rising and falling like breath. He placed his hand upon its surface. "Show me," he whispered. The light deepened, swirling faster. Images formed within, the halls above, the children sleeping in their beds, the teachers pacing through lamplit corridors. Then the vision sank lower, into the stone foundations, past the lake's still waters, down into the depths where the heart of water glowed like a living gem. At first it seemed peaceful, but then the light dimmed, and the shadows lengthened. From beyond the heart came a ripple, a distortion, subtle but spreading. Darkness poured outward like ink through clear water, tendrils reaching toward the castle's roots. The vein was growing. The image shivered, and Dumbledore saw flashes of what might come. The lake rising, the wards shattering, the dragon's resting place torn apart, Hogwarts itself trembling as if in pain. He withdrew his hand, breathing hard. The orb dimmed, returning to its faint glow. "Not yet," he murmured. "You will not have it yet." Footsteps sounded behind him. He turned, wand raised, but the light revealed not an intruder, only Snape, his face pale in the glow. "I thought you might come here." the younger man said. "The air in my chambers is filled with whispers. The lake dreams again, doesn't it?" Dumbledore regarded him a moment, then nodded. "It does." The seal weakens. The heart holds, but the vein presses harder each day. "Then why wait?" Snape demanded, his tone sharp though not unkind. "You cannot hope to contain this alone." "Because," Dumbledore said softly, "to fight it by force is to feed it. It is not evil in the way men are evil. It is hunger without thought, shadow without purpose. It consumes what resists." Snape frowned. "Then what would you do?" "I would remind it that it is not forgotten," Dumbledore replied. "Even shadow was born from light once." For a long moment they stood in silence, the echo of dripping water filling the space between words. Then Dumbledore turned toward the stairs. "Come." The castle stirs. It may already be too late to keep the children from feeling it. They emerged into the corridor above. The torches flickered wildly, casting long, wavering shadows. The stones beneath their feet trembled faintly. Far away, a deep groan rolled through the foundations like the sigh of a sleeping giant. By morning, the rumors had spread. Water seeping through the lowest floors, the lake rising against its banks, strange lights beneath the ice. Dumbledore summoned the staff. The great hall was dim, lit only by the gray light of dawn. "The vein awakens," he told them. "We must act now, or all we have built will be undone." McGonagall's face was pale but steady. "What must we do?" "Not seal it again," Dumbledore said. "We must transform it. Bind it not in chains, but in harmony with the castle itself. Make it part of the balance, not its enemy." Flitwick's eyes widened. "That would mean binding darkness with light. It's never been done." "Then we shall learn," said Dumbledore simply. "Prepare the students. Tonight we weave the final charm." All through the day the castle hummed with activity. The professors traced runes upon the walls, drew symbols into the air with their wands, whispered the old songs of the founders. The students, though frightened, obeyed. Candles lined every corridor, their flames forming threads of light that joined from tower to tower. When night fell, Dumbledore stood at the center of the courtyard. The air vibrated with power. The stars burned bright above, mirrored faintly in the restless waters of the lake. He raised his wand. "Hogwarts," he said softly, "my old friend, awake." The ground trembled. A low hum rose through the stones, 1,000 voices, the spirits of the castle itself singing in harmony. The candles flared, their flames twining into lines of gold that stretched outward toward the lake. The water answered. The surface broke with light, ripples forming symbols that matched the runes upon the walls. Deep below, the heart of water blazed brighter than ever before. The vein stirred, its darkness curling upward, but the light met it, not to destroy, but to merge. Shadow and flame twined together, coiling, shifting, until at last the lake glowed with a single color, neither blue nor black, but silver. The hum deepened, then slowly faded into stillness. Dumbledore lowered his wand. The air smelled of rain and stone. "It is done," he whispered. Snape stepped forward, watching the lake. "You've turned the darkness into part of the song." "For now," Dumbledore said, smiling faintly, "even the deepest shadow can learn to listen." The professors dispersed, leaving him alone with Fawkes. The phoenix sang once, soft and clear, his note carrying across the silent water. Beneath the surface, the heart pulsed gently, calm, united, whole. And far below, in the depths where the vein had slept, there was no hunger now, only a slow, steady rhythm. the sound of the castle breathing in peace. For the first time in many years, Dumbledore felt no dread. He turned toward Hogwarts, its windows aglow with soft light, and smiled. "Rest, my old friend," he murmured. "The balance endures." The night after the great enchantment, Hogwarts was utterly still. The castle, once filled with trembling walls and murmuring portraits, breathed in quiet unity. The snow that had fallen upon its towers glittered faintly beneath the pale dawn, and the lake lay calm as a polished mirror. No mist drifted from its surface. No wind disturbed the air. It was as if the whole of the Highlands paused to listen to the deep, slow heartbeat of peace at last restored. Albus Dumbledore stood upon the bridge that arched toward the forbidden forest, his cloak heavy with frost. The air was cold and sharp, yet clear as glass. From where he stood, he could see the faint gleam of the heart's reflection beneath the water, a single pulse of blue-white light, steady and sure. Fawkes perched on the stone rail beside him, preening his feathers, his crimson plumage bright against the winter gray. "It is beautiful," Dumbledore said quietly, and the words drifted from his lips like smoke. "And fragile." The phoenix trilled, a sound both joyful and mournful, as if echoing what Dumbledore himself could not say. He turned back toward the castle. Through the frosted air, the windows of the great hall glowed with warmth. The children were safe again. Laughter and the clatter of breakfast dishes echoed faintly upward. Life, ever resilient, had returned. Yet he knew peace such as this never lingered forever. It was a breath between storms, a heartbeat between centuries. But it was enough. For now. Later that morning he summoned the professors once more, not in alarm as before, but in quiet purpose. They gathered before the great fireplace in his office. McGonagall stood beside the window, her hands clasped tightly. Flitwick perched on the edge of a chair, eyes bright beneath his spectacles. Snape lingered in shadow, silent but watchful. "My friends," Dumbledore began, "the castle has spoken. Its balance is restored. The heart sleeps, and the vein has been woven into harmony with its song." McGonagall's stern features softened. "Then the danger is past?" "For this age," Dumbledore said, his smile faint. "But nothing in our world lasts untouched by time. The darkness that slept beneath the lake was never destroyed, only transformed. Someday, another will hear its call." "Then we must leave them warning," Flitwick said. "And wisdom," Dumbledore agreed, "not fear." He gestured toward a small table beside his desk. Upon it lay the silver orb, the echo crystal, its light now soft and gentle. "This shall remain sealed within the castle," he said. "Let it remember what we've learned, that balance cannot be forced, only nurtured, that even shadow has a place within the whole." Snape's voice broke the stillness. "You speak as though you do not expect to guard it yourself." Dumbledore's eyes, bright as candle flame, met his. "I will guard it as long as I am able, Severus. But the time of one man is no more than a moment to magic this ancient. Hogwarts will endure when we are all dust. It will need others to listen after I'm gone." For a long moment no one spoke. Then McGonagall said softly, "You mean the children?" "Yes," Dumbledore replied. "Every generation brings its light. One day, another will stand where we stand, and the castle will ask of them the same question. Will you keep the balance?" The fire crackled, casting shadows across their faces. Each of them, even Snape, seemed to hear the weight of centuries in those words. When the meeting was done and the professors had gone to their duties, Dumbledore descended alone into the courtyard. Snow crunched beneath his boots. The world was bright now, the air almost warm despite the frost. The heart's magic had changed the very breath of the land. The stillness felt not hollow but whole. He walked toward the lake once more. The surface was clear enough to see the reflection of the castle, the turrets, the towers, even the faint outline of the bridge upon which he had stood that morning. Beneath that reflection, deeper still, the light of the heart shimmered like a star beneath water. He raised his wand, not to cast, but simply to salute. "Sleep well, old guardian," he murmured. "You kept your vigil long beyond measure. The rest is yours." The water rippled once, a soft circle spreading outward as though in answer. Dumbledore smiled. Behind him, Fawkes sang, a pure rising note that filled the air, carrying across the lake, across the forest, even into the towers of the castle itself. The phoenix's fire burned bright, though no heat touched the snow. It was a song of renewal, of endings and beginnings alike. That evening, when twilight deepened and the stars rose over the mountains, Dumbledore walked the corridors of Hogwarts one last time before sleep. The torches flickered low, their light glinting off the ancient stones. He passed the great hall, where the house banners hung heavy and still, the library, where books whispered faintly in their slumber, the stairs which shifted with sleepy reluctance beneath his step. As he moved through those familiar halls, he felt the castle watching him, not with suspicion, but with quiet affection. It knew him now as he knew it. They had shared burden and triumph alike. He paused at a window overlooking the grounds. The snow had begun again, soft and slow. Beyond the glass, the lake glowed faintly, its surface reflecting both moon and starlight until one could scarcely tell which was which. Fawkes landed upon his shoulder, and together they stood watching until the first hint of dawn brushed the eastern sky. "Do you see, my friend?" Dumbledore said quietly. "There is no victory in this, only continuation. That is enough." The phoenix gave a soft note of assent, and so the days passed into months, and the months into years. The story of the water dragon faded into legend, whispered by students on winter nights. They spoke of how the headmaster had tamed a monster beneath the lake, of the light that had split the heavens and the peace that had followed. Few knew the truth that it had not been a battle, but a conversation between ages. Still, on calm nights, the lake would shimmer faintly with light, and those who stood upon its shore claimed they could hear the echo of wings beneath the water, and a voice, low, vast, and kind, murmuring as if in dream. Dumbledore grew older, as all men must, but whenever he looked upon the lake, he smiled. The heart still pulsed there, steady and bright, its rhythm now intertwined with that of the castle and all who called it home. The balance endured, and deep below, in the quiet dark, the last water dragon dreamed, not of wrath, but of stars reflected upon still water, and of a wizard whose wisdom had turned battle into peace. Thus ended the tale of the Battle of Dumbledore and the Water Dragon, a battle not of wands or curses, but of hearts and understanding. The guardian slept, the lake was calm, and the world, for a time, remembered how to be whole. The water remembers everything, and when it sings beneath the moon, it sings not of fear, but of